for allowing us to gather for another joint session in the great state of Florida. Bless the 120 House seats and the 40 seats in the Senate. Bless the leadership and staff of the Republican and Democratic caucuses and their families that support them. Bless Governor Ron DeSantis to lead this state with wisdom and integrity. Anoint President Ben Albritton with a double portion to be the set man of the Senate with uncompromising authority and divine leadership. Cover Speaker Daniel Perez with a fresh mantle to move under the radar of the enemy as he makes decisions to shift this state. Undergird Leader Fentress Driscoll with goodness and special grace for a prosperous journey in the days ahead. Bless every Supreme Court justice and all the other officials in their respective positions. May the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of our government work together to form a threefold cord that's not easily broken. God, as we vote on controversial issues this year, let our yeas be yea and our nays be nay, so that hard cases and hard places may be settled. God, because we are seated in the highest seats in the land, we need your protection from political altitudes that fill men's hearts with pride. Help us to stay humble. Help us to be humble before our peers. Help us to be humble before the people who elected us. And God, erase the political, the denominational, the racial, and the gender lines that divide us. May the lines of the Spirit fall upon us in sweet and agreeable places. And God, most of all, we need a supernatural hedge of protection over our homes and our families while we're in session. Allow us traveling mercy in the air and on the ground as we move between Tallahassee and our district. And finally, last but not least, this year as we handle the business of Florida, let a resounding sound be released in the spirit that will send a clear message to the enemies of this state and this great nation. And that message shall be that Florida is united and stronger than ever before because the members of this legislation have a resolve. And that resolve is that the good of over 23 million Floridians is our priority. And just as every word on the floor is recorded in the journal, let it be recorded in the heavenlies that the 2025 session for the House and Senate of the state of Florida has officially begun. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Praise God. The members and visitors in the gallery, if you would, please stand. Everybody's standing. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Today, the pledge will be led by Senate President Pro Tempore Jason Broder and House Pro Tempore Wyman Duggan. Let's do it.
Please join us. I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If you would, please be seated. For what purpose does Leader Soroy rise?
To make a motion, Mr. President.
You're recognized.
Mr. President, I move that a committee be appointed to notify the governor that the joint session is assembled and ready to receive his message.
Okay, Leader Soroy moves that a committee be appointed to notify the governor that joint session is assembled and ready to receive his message. All in favor, say yay. Yay. All opposed, no. Show the motion approved. On behalf of the Senate, I appoint Senators Hooper, Harrell, Wright, and Boyd, who will serve as co-chair. And on behalf of the Speaker, I appoint Representatives Jaquez, Schoaf, Cobb, Jay Lopez, and Soroy to serve as the co-chair with Senator Boyd. The committee is excused to perform your assignment. It's my pleasure, thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce two special guests that have joined us for the occasion, Speaker Perez's wife, Stephanie Perez. Stephanie. And my wife and soulmate, Missy. The joint session will now stand in formal recess and wait for the arrival of the governor. Sure. Take your seats. Members, if you would, take your seats. Sergeant Kelly, you're recognized.
Mr. President, the Governor of Florida.
Let the governor be received. Members of the legislature, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege and honor to introduce to you the governor of the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis. Also joining us in the East Gallery is the governor's wife, First Lady Casey DeSantis. Thank you. Members, family, friends, and guests, the governor of the state of Florida.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, members of the cabinet and the legislature, and fellow citizens. Florida leads. We lead with purpose and conviction. We lead with determination and strength. We lead with faith, and we lead with hope. Anyone can hold the helm while the sea is calm. Leadership matters when it's hard. Florida's the leader among states because we lean into challenges, tackle the big issues, and deliver results for the people that we serve. Now, in these endeavors, we're mindful of the adage from an American philosopher, quote, "If you don't know where you're going, you might wind up someplace else." Now, Yogi Berra was right to articulate, as only he could, the need for clear direction. We are guided in our efforts by a strong commitment to the principles on which our country was founded and that have endured for centuries. That our rights come from God, not from government. That constitutional limitations on government's power are essential to preserve liberty. That ours is a government of laws, not a government of men. And that government derives its power from the consent of we the people. The sturdy foundation of American principles is the guide that the free state of Florida must never abandon. We have stood in the breach and protected our people from noxious ideologies and trendy but empty social fads. We chose freedom over fear. We chose education over indoctrination. We have chosen law and order over rioting and disorder. We are proud of our state's accomplishments while we recognize the work that lies ahead. Our rudder is set. Our rudder is set. Our compass is in hand. True north is our destination. We can and we must continue to lead. Now, we are convening for the regular legislative session, having already enacted groundbreaking legislation to fulfill the historic mandate of delivering on President Donald Trump's mandate to end the illegal immigration crisis once and for all. No state has done more, and no state did it sooner than we did in the free state of Florida. Thanks to recent legislation, it's now a crime to enter Florida illegally. The days of catch and release are over, and all state and local law enforcement agencies have a duty to assist in interior immigration enforcement efforts. The voters have spoken, and Florida has responded. We will be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Now, joining us today are two great leaders in this effort, our newly minted immigration czar, Larry Keefe, and Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey. Please wave to us. There's Wayne. There he is. With leaders like Larry and Wayne, Florida will get the job done. We are not a sanctuary state. We are a rule of law state. Now, Florida has also led the way in creating a strong economic environment. For the past 2 years, Florida's economy has ranked #1 in these United States. We rank #1 in entrepreneurship, #1 in new business formations, #1 in GDP growth amongst large states, and we have an unemployment rate that has been lower than the national average for more than 50 consecutive months straight. We represented the refuge for freedom and sanity during the coronavirus pandemic, not just for other states and throughout our country, but even for people throughout the world. People moved here, businesses flocked to our state, and investment to Florida surged. We continue to set tourism records. 2024 saw more than 142 million visitors come to the state of Florida. This includes 3.3 million visitors from Canada. That's not much of a boycott in my book. Maybe they wanted to get a glimpse of what a Stanley Cup winning hockey team actually looks like. Now, the legislature in recent years has enacted historic reforms that have improved economic conditions and has addressed very difficult issues like insurance. Because of these reforms, automobile insurance rates are scheduled to come down this year, between 6 and 10.5% average reductions amongst the 3 largest companies, even as rates continue to skyrocket nationwide. And our homeowners insurance market is seeing stability. 11 new companies have entered the market over the past year. 130,000 new private policies were put into effect in 2024. And last year, believe it or not, S&P Global rated Florida as having the lowest increases amongst all 50 states. We were also recently able to announce that in 2025, 73% of Citizens property insurance homeowners in Miami-Dade County are scheduled to receive a decrease on average of 6.3%. Now, the fact is this: the Florida legislature has devoted more time and effort to address insurance reforms over the past few years than at any other time in the history of the state of Florida. Those reductions in auto would not have happened without your reforms, and the stability that we saw in 2024 would not have happened without you taking action. And I hope that the legislature continues these efforts by providing funding for those on the My Safe Florida Home wait list. These are people that have been approved. These are folks that have already been approved. These grants have helped tens of thousands of Floridians harden their home, which has also in many instances led to rate relief. The program is a testament to the legislature's commitment to helping our homeowners. It has made a difference, and it can do so again. Now, our economy is strong in part because our spending and budget policies are sensible. We are actually spending less money in the current fiscal year than we did in the previous fiscal year. Where else in this country have they actually reduced spending? We have the lowest number of state government workers per capita amongst all 50 states. Over the past 6 years, we have more than tripled our state's rainy day fund. We just recently celebrated our 180th birthday as a state, and I'm happy to say just since 2019, if you take all the debt that's been accumulated over that period of time, we've paid off 41% of it in the last 6 years. Our state has among the lowest per capita state debts in all of the United States of America. The share of Florida's debt for each Florida citizen is about $660. The share of the national debt for each U.S. citizen is north of $100,000 per U.S. citizen. Can the congressman in Washington, D.C. please take a page out of Florida's fiscal playbook for a change? Now, Florida is a free state in part because we are a low-tax state. We have one of the top 5 tax environments in the nation, famously have no income tax, and we've enacted billions of dollars in tax relief over the past 6 years. We must continue to be a friend to the taxpayer. Now, in addition to our traditional tax holidays, I'm proposing we add holidays for marine fuel to help our boaters and anglers enjoy Florida's waters, as well as a Second Amendment summer for the purchases of firearms, ammo, and accoutrements. I know a lot of people in the state will appreciate that. Florida remains the only state in America to tax business rent. And while we've reduced the rate of the tax, it is time to eliminate it altogether. While Florida property values have surged in recent years, this has come at a cost to taxpayers squeezed by increasing local government property taxes. These escalating assessments have created a gusher of revenue for local governments, and in many throughout Florida have seen their budgets increase far beyond the growth in their populations. Taxpayers need relief. You buy a home, you pay off the mortgage, and yet you still have to write a check to the government every year just for the privilege of living on your own private property. Is the property yours, or are you just renting it from the government? And I know members of the legislature are studying the issue in anticipation of formulating a proposal to place on the 2026 ballot so that we can provide constitutional protections for Florida homeowners. Please know you have my support in this endeavor. Oh, and one other thing. Don't let anyone tell you we're going to seek to raise state taxes, because this body will not pass tax increases and this governor will not sign any tax increases. Florida is also led on the issue of education. We've been ranked #1 in America for the past 2 years. We are the top state in America for school choice, and our school choice program has changed lives. Joining us today is Harley McCullough, whose son Thorne is a recipient of Florida's Family Empowerment Scholarship for Unique Abilities. Where are you at? There you go, wave. All right. Yes. Now, Thorne, her son Thorne attends the Jacksonville School for Autism simply because of the scholarship that has been enacted in the state of Florida. He can now pursue an education that fits his unique needs instead of being forced into a one-size-fits-all approach. And stories like Thorne are legion up and down the state of Florida. Our universal school choice program works. Families and students have benefited, and the academic bar has been raised throughout the state. It's a great testament to the members of the Florida legislature that we were the first state to enact such an ambitious and far-reaching choice program. We also recognize the importance of recruiting and retaining great teachers. We have enacted a teacher's bill of rights. We've provided protection against coerced union dues, and we have invested a record $4.6 billion towards raising teacher salaries. I'm pleased to be joined by Hernando County teacher Jamie Suarez. Stand up and wave to the crowd. Jamie is the Florida Teacher of the Year for 2024. And as Teacher of the Year, she earned it by being a high-impact teacher. She's the grade team leader and mentor, and she serves as the district's textbook selection on the district's textbook selection committee. So I want to thank Jamie for making a difference, and I want to thank so many of our teachers who have made a difference in the lives of their students. And because of that, I'm again recommending an increase in money that's dedicated to increasing teacher salaries, as well as a continuation of the civics bonus program that gives a $3,000 bonus to all teachers that complete our Civic Seal of Excellence training course. Now, our universities have earned strong commendations, and we currently have 4 state universities ranked within the top 50 for public universities throughout the entire United States. Universities must be dedicated to the pursuit of truth, the promotion of academic rigor and integrity, and the preparation of students to be citizens of this republic. We led the way in Florida by being the first state to eliminate DEI from our higher education system. We continue to lead the way by holding the line on tuition. We have not allowed a tuition increase since I've become governor, and Florida has the lowest in-state tuition in the entire United States of America. Families deserve state universities that provide education, not indoctrination. And that education must be attainable for students regardless of their family's financial status. And I'm happy to report that in both of these regards, we are delivering for the people of Florida. Florida is also led on some of the most intractable issues, ranging from substance abuse to child welfare. Hope Florida was designed by our First Lady, Casey DeSantis, to transform the way government agencies provided services to our fellow citizens in need. Rather than perpetuate dependence on a great society-style bureaucracy, Hope Florida seeks to use government to connect individuals and families to more than 5,600 faith-based, community, and private sector partners. Ginger Falk is with us here, and she illustrates Hope Florida's impact. Stand up and wave and say hello. Now, Ginger was struggling to make ends meet, and her goal of becoming a physical therapist seemed like an elusive dream. Thanks to the help of a Hope Florida navigator, Ginger was connected to resources that helped her complete a physical therapy program. She's now a physical therapy assistant, and she is on her way to realizing her dreams. By the end of 2024, Florida has helped nearly 30,000 participants reduce or entirely eliminate their reliance on government assistance. This has provided them with a pathway to financial independence, and it has netted the taxpayers over $108 million in annual savings. In the aftermath of Hurricanes Debbie, Helene, and Milton, Activate Hope, the emergency relief arm of Hope Florida, helped over 57,000 Floridians with essential supplies and provided more than 33,000 with referrals to overcome disaster-related hardships. The Hope Florida model is now being replicated by other states around the country. Thank you to my wife, Casey, for her leadership and her ingenuity. Great job. We are fortunate to live in a naturally beautiful state. We promised 6 years ago to leave Florida to God better than we found it, and we're doing just that. The Florida Wildlife Corridor, established in 2021, now spans 18 million acres, with 10 million acres already protected. Last year, we directed the Florida Department of Transportation to enhance connectivity within the corridor. Since 2019, we've approved over $129 million for 38 crossings, ensuring safer passage for species like the famed Florida panther. We've also shattered records for state support, for Everglades restoration, for water quality improvements, and for beach renourishment. While our efforts have been strong, the federal government has lagged in its responsibilities regarding Everglades restoration. But I'm happy to report that the Trump administration is receptive to block granting money to us so that we can complete these needed projects like the EAA reservoir ourselves. One thing I've learned, Florida time is a lot faster than Army Corps of Engineers time.
Stand up for that. You're dead right.
Everglades restoration is the largest environmental restoration project in the entire country and one of the largest in the entire world. We are on the path. We're ahead of schedule from the state perspective, but we need to get this job done once and for all. And so we will be working with the Trump administration to bring that to fruition. Now, our Florida paradise was interrupted by a series of hurricanes over the past year. These storms brought major destruction, but also witnessed a strong emergency response across both the state and local governments. Utility linemen were pre-staged, and millions of customers who lost power were restored in record time. Massive amounts of debris were removed, including round-the-clock emergency effort to marshal state assets to remove Hurricane Helene debris in advance of Hurricane Milton. We even had to break open a couple padlocks to be able to get that done. The search and rescue effort was momentous. This includes the rescue of a dog that had been cruelly abandoned on the side of I-75 in advance of Hurricane Milton. Florida Highway Patrol Trooper Orlando Morales rescued the dog as water was rising to the dog's neck. The dog has been renamed Trooper and is now in a safe and loving home. Trooper Morales, stand up, because we would like to thank you for rescuing that great dog. Now, at the state level, we have utilized all available levers, from the Florida Disaster Fund to our small business loan program, to help individuals get back on their feet after these flurry of hurricanes. We are joined by Cannon Gregg, the founder of Pelican Oyster Company. Stand up, my man. Where are you at? There you are. Now, his farm was devastated by Hurricane Michael back in 2018. Of course, he rebuilt and then got hit by Hurricanes Helene and Milton. He will be a recipient of grant funds to support rebuilding efforts and to get his business back to normal. The recovery efforts after major hurricanes persist long after the cameras leave. I know more needs to be done, and you can count on me to be supportive of future legislative efforts to help with these important recoveries. Now, we know we have some important issues to address. We saw the petition fraud that took place with the amendments 3 and 4, but particularly Amendment 4. We saw how that constitutional amendment process was perverted. We need to clean up the petition fraud, and we need to clean up this out-of-control amendment process, and you in the legislature have the opportunity to do just that and protect Florida's Constitution once and for all. We've also had many discussions about condominium reform. And I know there was efforts to be made after the tragedy at Surfside in 2021. Those were all very well-intentioned efforts, and I think probably have done a lot of good. But in some instances, it's putting people in a very difficult financial pickle. I've been sounding this drum for many months. I have every bit of confidence that the legislature is going to fully address the needs of our Florida condo owners. We do not want to see anybody forced out of their condominium because of legislation. So let's get the job done for them. Now, the free state of Florida has not exactly led the way on protecting Second Amendment rights. We have some of the more weak laws on the country compared to our other states who consider themselves conservative. I would ask you to protect people's Second Amendment rights. Look back in instances where legislation may have been passed in recent years, such as shifting the burden on red flag laws, such as taking away the rights of young adults to be able to purchase firearms, such as limiting somebody's ability to both keep and to bear arms, as our Constitution does. We need to be a strong Second Amendment state. I know many of you agree with it, and so let's get some positive reform done for the people of this state of Florida. Now, before I conclude, I'd be remiss if I didn't remind everybody of some of the accomplishments that together we have achieved over these past 6 years. We banned China from purchasing land in the state of Florida. We enacted a digital Bill of Rights. We protected Floridians against the imposition of a central bank digital currency. We instituted the death penalty for pedophiles. We created a program to accelerate the repayment of state debt, and we've saved hundreds of millions of dollars in interest costs as a result. We enacted protections for the sanctity of human life. We codified parental rights in education. We codified parental rights in education and eliminated gender ideology from our schools. We created a law enforcement bonus and scholarship program to recruit and retain great police officers throughout our state. We divested state holdings from Chinese banks and investment firms. We kneecapped so-called ESG in our pension fund, in the workplace, and in financial institutions, and as a result of that, we were leading the effort to kill ESG nationwide. We brought transparency and accountability to pharmaceutical companies to lower drug costs. We initiated the Moving Florida Forward program to accelerate over 20 infrastructure and congestion relief projects across the state. We provided billions of dollars in tax relief, including the permanent elimination of sales tax on all essential baby items. Now, I could go on, but in the interest of time, let's just say that working together, we have amassed a record that is without peer anywhere else in the entire country. And to our To our presiding officers, Speaker Perez and President Albritton, I look forward to working together to advance our shared goals. Now, Speaker Perez represents the busy, fast-paced, modern Miami, the gateway of the Americas, a unique place, not just in our state, but in our country. President Albritton represents the Florida heartland, sometimes overlooked, not by me, but by some, but that has served as the backbone of our state for generations. While coming from different backgrounds, these leaders have a strong desire to make Florida a better place. I congratulate them on earning the opportunity to lead their respective chambers, and I look forward to the days ahead. To our Chief Financial Officer, Jimmy Patronis, Thank you for your service to our state. Thank you for your service to our state as you prepare to get called up to the big leagues to serve in the U.S. Congress. My advice is to stay true to the Northwest Florida values that you've lived your life by and don't catch Potomac fever. Oh, and if you can teach them up in Congress to handle the budget like we do down there, then you'll be doing this country a very valuable service. Commissioner Wilton Simpson, you'll soon be the most tenured member of the Florida cabinet. I will say your department has made significant improvements since you've taken over from your predecessor. You have stepped up. You have stepped up as part of our state's new immigration board to assist in the state's effort to combat illegal immigration. Your department has already done great work, and I thank you for doing that. We have a new Attorney General, James Uthmeyer, who is James has been instrumental in many of the successes that I've outlined today. I was happy to appoint him to be the state's top law enforcement officer, and man, is he already off to a very strong start. So we look forward to his work ahead. Now, to the members of the legislature, you're entrusted by your constituents to exercise sound judgment on their behalf. You have been more productive than any legislature in America over the past 6 years, and you should be proud of that work, and you should be proud of your willingness to serve. As Theodore Roosevelt famously said, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who errs, who comes up short again and again because there's no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while doing greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. My friends, we have great opportunities over the next 60 days. The people of Florida are watching. Let's work together to solidify our successes and address the challenges before us. Our voyage is not yet complete, but our goal is to one day say, in the words of Walt Whitman, oh Captain, our fearful trip is done. The ship has weathered every rack. The prize we sought is won. Good luck, and God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Fentress Driscoll, Democratic leader of the Florida House of Representatives. Once again, it's the day the governor delivers his State of the State address, when he tells us all what he's mad about this week. You'd think that after so many years of Republican control here in Florida, he'd find something to be happy about. I needed to record this ahead of time, but I'm willing to make an educated guess about what he said. First, he failed to share anything resembling a viable plan for a better future for all Floridians. Instead, he probably ranted about random things like New York, Joe Biden, red snapper populations, or fictional university students majoring in zombie studies or something, and blamed everything on the woke left. And he sounded angry and indignant. After spending years locked in a contest of wills with President Trump and getting his hand slapped by his own party in a recent special session, DeSantis is now scrambling for political relevance. So he's more willing to embrace whatever fresh horror gets dreamed up in Washington, D.C. The latest proposed dysfunction? A Florida Doge, recklessly hacking at our state government with no regard to what important programs get mowed under. Republicans have been in charge in Florida for well over 2 decades now, so any waste or fraud rests at their feet, as does the real damage they do to Floridians when they disrupt or cut essential services, just like their DC counterparts. This isn't reform. It's a ridiculous stunt, and it's harmful to Floridians. Another of DeSantis' recent schemes is to talk about ending property taxes. Unfortunately, he conveniently fails to explain how our communities would be harmed as a consequence. He wants the headlines and attention, but he doesn't mention that property tax dollars fund our local schools, police, firefighters, sanitation workers, and all the other things our local governments do every day. And if these communities needed to fire your kid's teacher, or the officers that patrol your neighborhood, or the closest fire station to your house, well, that's not his fault. By the time that happens, he'll have moved on to another culture war to distract us from a simple truth. He has no plans to make your life better. To be clear, I have yet to hear any Floridian say, "Please help, we have too many firefighters and teachers. My town streets are too smooth, or my garbage is picked up too fast." Instead, the people who sent us here tell us they want their government to focus on kitchen table issues, not culture war distractions. Our communities elected us to help you. My caucus and I believe that every Floridian deserves the freedom to be healthy, prosperous, and safe. Yesterday, our caucus introduced a set of bills for the 2025 legislative session with those pillars in mind. These are the things we would focus on if we were in power. First, we would better fund our public schools, ensuring that every child in Florida has access to a high-quality education. That opens the doors to jobs that pay enough to make ends meet. Next, we would set aside the partisan politics and accept the federal money that comes with Medicaid expansion. Florida is only one of 10 states still refusing these dollars. Right now, Floridians' tax dollars are paying for medical care for Californians, New Yorkers, and Oklahomans, and we get nothing in return. For a while now, the number one issue we hear about from our neighbors back home is the outrageous cost of housing. Rent is sky high and home ownership is exorbitant. Floridians are suffering. We would tackle this problem immediately because Florida is becoming expensive for too many Floridians. A strong state means a strong job market where families thrive, not just survive. And we will always defend the working people of Florida by promoting fair wages, protecting workers' rights, and enhancing workplace safety. Florida is famous for our water, and we have a plan to protect this natural resource from both harmful algae blooms and lead contamination in our drinking water. We would also work to promote responsible gun ownership, calling for common sense safety ideas like universal background checks and tackling the crisis of suicides among our veterans here in Florida. Now, we understand the political reality of Tallahassee, so we know these ideas aren't likely to go anywhere, regardless of how good they are. It isn't easy being in the minority party in the legislature, but we aren't Democrats only when it's easy. We're here to advocate for our communities and make our voices heard, and that's what we'll be doing. Unfortunately, because he thinks it's better for his career, Governor DeSantis is happy to put on a show to try to convince you that he's on your side. But his policies have hurt all of us as costs increase and services decrease. Also, he can try to salvage what's left of his political career. While Ron DeSantis is putting his own ambitions first, we want to put Florida first, and that means focusing on Florida's families and our future. We need to protect our people, our land, water, and economy, because that's what we were sent here to do. Democrats are here and ready to work to move Florida forward. Thank you, and God bless the great state of Florida.
This morning, the governor opened by asserting that he has tackled the big challenges. Rather than walk down a beaten path of a pre-recorded criticism that's typical of the focus of minority caucus responses, I'm going to take this opportunity to reflect in real time on the last several years. I recall the governor's first State of the State in my own first year in 2019, where a rather humble voice invited a co-equal branch of government to engage in a shared responsibility of governance by stating that in a constitutional system with separated powers, we, the political branches, must work together so we can build off the foundation that has been laid and set the stage for the future success of our state. That agenda, in light of the most important issues of the time expressed by Floridians, was themed as Be Bold. Be bold to, quote, champion economic opportunity, protect Florida's environment, improve education, defend the safety of our communities, and a host of nonpartisan issues that, in theory, every elected official could get behind. And as a freshman legislator, a father of twin boys who were then in 6th grade at the time, and relying on the expectation that even political foes could find common ground on solving problems instead of manufacturing them, where each branch would squarely resist the overreach of another, no one could anticipate the crippling effect one's personal ambitions would have on an entire branch. No Republican, and certainly no serious Democrat, sought to expand any of the policies or positions Republicans claimed were so rampant and so necessary to defeat. I have never pushed to install or even expand CRT, ESG, DEI, or wokeism. For none of these will lower your property insurance, your rent, nor will they result in your kids' GPAs getting higher or their test scores going higher. And like many of you, I've wondered how, with more than 30 years of majority control in the legislature and executive branches, how any of these issues were so insidious that they festered into such an instant concern. Or rather, how did a generation of Republican predecessors allow us to get to this place? And more important, why did these academic issues so dominate our time and capacity instead of paying attention to failing infrastructure, plummeting test scores, spikes in homeowners insurance, and housing costs? How did we get to a place where the National Guard had to be, and continues to be, called in to fill critical staffing shortages at our state prison? How bold have we been with these real issues? The only rankings we've held steady on during the last 6 years are nearing the bottom in law enforcement salaries and near the top in insurance premiums and human trafficking. It's only in the last month, really, amidst an unnecessary public affray that the legislature has once again recaptured its autonomy. To be fair, the governor has been a good executive when performing executive functions. My own district has truly benefited and appreciated disaster responses after storms, direct assistance following the tragic loss of 98 lives in my district, and the shift from legislators having to beg for dollars to bring home each session to objective criteria applied to infrastructure project applications direct to state agencies. The mention of illegal immigration is not a new topic for the governor. It began with sanctuary cities in 2019 and urging the legislature to require E-Verify in 2020. And while many have talked tough on combating illegal immigration, here we are in 2025, and I, the Democratic minority leader, was the first to file the bill requiring E-Verify for all employers. Because you are not serious about curbing illegal immigration if you continue to cower to donors and not listen to our citizens. During this last special session, while we continue to add yet more duties upon our law enforcement community and dangerous activities, we did nothing to recognize their commitment. Less than 24 hours after I made mention of this on the Senate floor, the governor, and I applaud him for doing so, held a press conference announcing salary increases for state law enforcement. But for our career public servants, whether they're teachers, firefighters, or police officers, they deserve to be recognized and valued for their long-term career commitment, not sprinkled with bonus checks around election time. No hard-working Floridian, let's be honest, is asking for an equal outcome, just a fair shot at their vision, their family's vision of the American dream. Today, really, even in a light most favorable to what the governor may characterize as victories, the top priorities for Floridians are relatively unchanged, just as they were 6 years ago, and yet unaddressed. And many, like education, housing, and insurance, remain well within our legislative purview. My sons who were in 6th grade 6 years ago are now 18. One is heading to a Florida university this year and wants to be a law enforcement officer in Florida. The other shipped off last week to boot camp to be a United States Marine. In the last 6 years, if there are any indication of what's in store for our children's future, crafted by the whims of the executive branch and not by the wishes of our constituents who entrusted this legislature, I'm not confident our precious time and resources won't continue to be wasted on rhetoric. But this morning, Senate President Ben Albritton presented an agenda, a legislative agenda that is robust and real, to feed families, to foster economic growth, to protect our children, our homes, demand efficiencies with your tax dollars, and the right to course the years of neglect and indifference. Speaker Perez expressed much of the same. And so I pledge my absolute commitment that if we can focus on this agenda, there need not be an ideology or even an aisle that divides us. Many of my Democratic colleagues have filed bills that addressed housing cost concerns, economies and jobs and education, and I look for those to be agended and to be heard by our colleagues in a nonpartisan, productive fashion. And against all evidence to the contrary, I hold out faith and hope in the decency of our members and the vast power we hold, that their call to service, once rooted in the amplifying the voices of struggling families, the hopes of small businesses, the need to invest in community resiliency, to leave our sons and daughters an environment better than we found it, will ring louder than the disruptive and divisive whispers of special interests. So thank you, and may God continue to grace us with the opportunity to preserve his blessings and the ability to improve the quality of lives in the great state of Florida.
Not only the state of Florida, but for the country, we're rocking and rolling on that. I mean, we've got all the state agencies are locked on the 287G agreements, which I could have done even in the absence of the legislation, but all 67 sheriff's departments, and now Larry Keefe is working on all the police departments. I was talking to Wayne Ivey. He's got all the police departments in Brevard that are on board, and I know some other sheriffs are working for things of that nature, so that's a really big deal, and we've led by example. You saw Virginia governor ordered the state to participate. I think you're going to see more and more of that as these weeks and months go on. So that was a huge priority. We're glad that we were able to get that done, and we've been off to the races, and we've gone so much faster than any other state. I did mention some other issues that we hopefully will be able to address, the petition reform, the condos issues. Those are two things that pretty much everyone agrees needs to see some action. I've been hands off on the condo. We solicited a lot of information over the last many months. We've provided a number of different feedback items. I know the Senate has done some stuff, but the reality is this is going to continue to be an issue until it's addressed. And I trust that they're going to do it. We obviously wanted to do it a couple months ago, but as long as it gets done, I think that'll make a big difference. And both leaders have indicated they want to do the overhaul of the petition process and how those amendments have worked and not worked very well. And I really think that that's something that's important. So I look forward to seeing that, as well as many other great things that will likely come up down the pike. Okay, any questions? Yes.
Hey, Governor, I'm curious what you think about the House Speaker's call for basically an investigation of insurers. You mentioned how the market is stabilized, but he's saying that he's worried that they may have been collecting profits and saying it was a crisis.
Well, I think that there was a report about 2017 to 2019. And there were parts of the insurance, the way it worked, that were not even subject to oversight. But the reforms in 22, now that's all subject to oversight. So I'm not sure whether there's examples of that since then that OIR has not done. I know that they look at the books very closely. If there's things that need to be done to be able to make sure that we have transparency and appropriate oversight, I'm all for it. What I am not going to support is opening up the litigation floodgates. The fact is our markets were being driven into the ground because of excessive litigation. We had 78% of all litigation costs nationwide with 8% of the claims. What killed me on the statistics is most of the litigation was Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach. They haven't been hit by hurricanes in the last 10 years, maybe a little in Dade and Irma, but Broward and Palm Beach haven't all, and yet they have all this. Why? Because it became a cottage industry. So if you want to have situations where lawyers will get hundreds of thousands and the policyholder will get 40 or 50,000, just know you are going to destabilize the market and you are going to see things spiral. And just think about where we are. This is not easy to do, but you have major hurricanes. We had 3 significant storms, right? And 5 years ago, people would have said if that happened that the whole markets would just collapse. No one's saying that now. So far, the rates that have been filed with the Office of Insurance Regulation are 2%, 0.2, 0.8%, 1% increases. That's a sign of stability. So I think folks have entered our market, unlike California, some other states where they're fleeing the market. And what they want to know is that this business environment is going to be stable in the state of Florida. And I know I've spoken with members of the Senate. This is going to be stable in Florida. Like what has been done is going to remain. If there are things that we need to do on a regulatory front, I mean, I'm open to that. I'm also open to other ideas. I mean, for example, I know there's an idea to surge DOA judges to hurricane areas so that we can get rapid adjudication of claims. I think that sounds great to me. I'm all about doing that. But what we can't do is do litigation bonanza. That was something that needed to be done. You would not have had reduction in auto insurance. GEICO would not be reducing by 10.5% if you didn't do the litigation reform. Car insurance is spiking nationwide. We don't have the best driving in Florida, and yet they're doing. The reduction is solely because of the litigation reform, and that's just the nature of it. But I will say what was pointed out in those comments, I think based on the report, the legislature has addressed that specific issue with oversight now. So all that is subject to oversight. And I know if there's anything that can be done, OIR has been willing to hold people accountable. We're going to work that out. I mean, what I said in my comments was you got to get 60%. So I want to get as bold of relief for taxpayers as possible. We are going to be, the legislature is going to be studying different aspects of it. One of the things that I announced that we're looking for is give us a period of time, a year, year and a half, to be able to doge local governments. Realistically, we got to do this probably within the next 6 months to be able to shine some light on how that's. Now, I do have some authority under current statutes to get certain information about financial management. It's not probably what you would need to do a full doge. But I think what people see is these budgets have gone up dramatically, way, way in excess of the population increases. And look, some of it's inflation. I mean, we've seen that in Florida. We've had big population spike, big inflation. And even though our budget's been stable the last couple years, it's higher than it was 6 or 8 years ago, partially just because of that. But we need to show that. And then I think we're going to be at a great spot to say, okay, what can we get on the ballot? What can get past the legislature to get on the ballot? And then what can we marshal 60% of the electorate? As you know, we can't just cut property taxes through the state legislature because of the constitutional foundations of vesting that in local government. But the reality is twofold. One, you have people who are just living their lives. They bought a house 10 years ago, and now someone's telling them it's worth $1 million, and they got to pony up more money to the government. And our homestead exemption is not adequate. It is not adequate to protect taxpayers against that. So people are really getting pinched, and that's a huge, huge problem. And then you just have the overall philosophical point of, is it private property or not? Because if they can just keep taxing you when you own the home, own the land, free and clear, and they're just taxing you, then really you're paying rent to the government. And I think a lot of people think that that's wrong. So there will be something that we'll work on over these next many months, look to put it on the next legislative session, not this one. And realistically, it's going to go on 26 ballot anyways. So we're going to do that. And I know people want relief. And this is things, I don't like do polling or anything, but it's like when you just are out and about and people come up to you like at a gas station or something, oh yeah, the property taxes, we need relief. Like, people really do need this. And that's the one thing we control. We can't, all the price increases you've seen on groceries, on all these other things, the government ultimately can't, we can't set price control, say, okay, we're going to say eggs are $1 a dozen. Like, if I could do that, I would. That's just not the way it works. But the taxes, that's solely in control of government, and we, the people, to be able to decide how that's going. So I'm excited about the prospect of providing relief. We've done a lot of tax relief in Florida. Billions of dollars worth of relief over the last 6 years. It's meaningful. We're going to do more. I think the legislature's of the mindset we've reduced the business rent tax. We're the only state in the country that does it. Let's just eliminate it. I think they probably are receptive to that. And so that's all great. But this property tax is hitting people, and it's tough.
Is this in here for constitutional carry?
What's that?
Constitutional carry?
carry? Do you think it gets through this year?
So I am support. So, you know, it's kind of some of it's semantics. So the constitutional carry was what they called was signed by me in 2023, which was permitless concealed carry, which is actually the more important of the two. There's more states that allow open carry than allow concealed carry because it's just viewed if you know somebody has a firearm, they're quote less of a threat or a menace. If it's concealed, then you don't know. So it's always been people are more careful on concealed, or legislatures have been, than on open. So it's kind of an anomaly that we have permitless concealed, which I support, but do not allow open. And we're one of, I think, 4 states, California, Illinois, New York, and Florida, that doesn't do it. And I hear the arguments against it, but we know that's not true because we see other states that have laws that respect that. So I'm for it. I've always been for it. And here's what I know. If you talk to most gun owners, very few gun owners will actually open carry. They just want to know that they can. It's a constitutional right, and they want to know they can exercise their constitutional right. So I'm for open carry. I'm also, and I called in the speech to reevaluate some of the recent legislation, which predated me as governor, but things like, you know, if you look at this red flag law that was passed, you can go in, they can go in and say, this person's a danger, they should have their firearms taken away, which is property in addition to being something connected with a constitutional right. And then the burden shifts where you have to prove to a court that you are not a menace or a threat. That's not the way due process works. The burden's always on the government, yet they've shifted the burden for doing that. The reality is this is not something that's been adjudicated.